So this billionaire walks into a charity gala, points at a random woman, and bets his entire friend group $1 million each that he can make her fall in love with him in 3 months. Plot twist? She's the only woman in the room who literally couldn't care less about his money. And what happens next? Let's just say karma has a wicked sense of humor. I'm about to tell you the wildest love story you'll hear today. Meet Zachary Chen, originally born and raised in Singapore. 32 years old, tech billionaire, owns 3 Ferraris, a penthouse in Manhattan, and an ego the size of Texas. Zach made his fortune creating some app that I still don't understand, but apparently it made him richer than a small country. Here's the thing about Zach. He collected hearts like some people collect stamps. Supermodels, actresses, Instagram influencers with millions of followers. He'd date them for a few weeks, get bored, and move on. Love to him was just another transaction, another conquest, another checkbox on his list of life achievements. So one night, Zach's at this fancy charity gala. You know, the kind where a plate of rubber chicken costs $5,000 and everyone's wearing clothes that cost more than your car. He's surrounded by his equally obnoxious rich friends, and they're all bragging about their latest achievements. His buddy Preston goes, "Bro, I closed a $20 million deal last week without even trying." Another friend Derek chimes in, "That's nothing. I convinced a Victoria's Secret model to fly to Monaco with me after one text message." Zach, never one to be outdone, laughs and says, "You guys are amateurs. I could make any woman fall in love with me in 3 months. Any woman. It's all about confidence and strategy." Preston rolls his eyes. "Oh, really? Any woman. Any woman," Zach repeats, taking a sip of his $1,000 champagne. "Okay, hot shot," Derek says, smirking. "Prove it. We'll pick the woman, and if you can't make her fall for you in 3 months, you owe each of us $1 million. Now, a smart man would have walked away. But Zach, his ego was writing checks his heart couldn't cash. "Done. Pick anyone in this room." His friends scan the ballroom with wicked grins on their faces. They're looking for someone, anyone, who wouldn't fit Zach's usual type. And that's when Preston spots her. "Her," Preston says, pointing across the room. "The woman in the blue dress by the dessert table." Zach looks over and his confidence doesn't even flicker. Easy. Watch and learn, gentlemen. But here's what Zach didn't know. The woman they'd pointed to was Natalie Rodriguez, and she was about to turn his entire world upside down. Natalie wasn't like the women Zach usually pursued. She was a middle school math teacher who'd been dragged to this gala by her sister who worked in event planning. She was curvy, confident, wearing a dress from a department store, and honestly, she was only at the dessert table because the chocolate cake looked amazing, and she'd already decided this fancy party was boring. Zach strutted over with his $1 million smile. "Hi there, I'm Zachary Chen. You look like you're not enjoying yourself." Natalie glanced at him while taking a bite of cake. "That's because I'm not. These events are pretentious. Everyone here is trying too hard." Zach blinked. Women didn't usually insult events he attended within the first 10 seconds of meeting him. "I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name?" "That's because I didn't throw it," Natalie replied with a slight smirk. "Look, I'm sure you're very important or whatever, but I'm really just here for the cake. It's actually good. You should try it instead of trying to pick up women at charity events." And just like that, she walked away. Actually walked away. From him. From Zachary Chen. His friends were dying, laughing across the room. Preston practically spit out his champagne. Zach's face turned red, but not from embarrassment. From determination and game on. Now here's where this story gets interesting. Because Zach was used to rejection being temporary, a minor obstacle before inevitable victory. But Natalie? She was about to teach him lessons his Harvard MBA never covered. Stick with me, because what happens next involves a fake dating profile, an accidentally donated Ferrari, and the most humiliating moment of Zach's life at a middle school talent show. Zach did what any rational billionaire with a bruised ego would do. He hired a private investigator to learn everything about Natalie. Creepy? Absolutely. But Zach called it strategic research. He learned she taught 7th grade math at a public school in Brooklyn. She volunteered at animal shelters on weekends. She had a close-knit group of friends. a younger sister she was putting through college, and she drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic that barely started on cold mornings. Zach's strategy? Accidentally bump into her at her favorite coffee shop. So he shows up at this tiny Brooklyn cafe at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, wearing a hoodie and jeans, trying to look normal. Natalie's in line ahead of him, ordering her regular coffee. Zach clears his throat. Natalie, right? From the gala? She turns around, surprised. Stalker vibes much? How did you even know I'd be here? Zach panics. I live in the neighborhood? You live in Brooklyn? She raises an eyebrow. Aren't you that billionaire tech guy? I Googled you after the gala. Pretty sure your penthouse is in Manhattan. Busted. Zach tries to recover. I'm apartment hunting. Yeah, thinking of moving to Brooklyn. More authentic, you know? Natalie laughs, and not in a charmed way. Authentic? Dude, you're trying way too hard. Look, I don't know what this is, but I'm not interested in whatever game you're playing. She grabs her coffee and leaves. Again, strike two. Over the next month, Zach tries everything. He randomly shows up at her school's bake sale and buys 75 cupcakes. He donates a ridiculous amount of money to her school's music program. Anonymously, but then accidentally mentions it in conversation. He even volunteers at the animal shelter where she works weekends, despite being genuinely terrified of dogs. And you know what? None of it works. Natalie sees right through every move. One Saturday at the shelter, while Zach is awkwardly trying to walk a hyperactive golden retriever named Biscuits, Natalie finally confronts him. Okay, what is this really about? She asks, arms crossed. Because I've seen you randomly show up everywhere I go for a month now. Are you genuinely interested in me? Or is this some weird rich person hobby? Zach, covered in dog hair and mud from Biscuits dragging him through a puddle, realizes something terrifying. He's actually started to like her not as a conquest, not as a bet, but as a person. He struggles for words. Honestly? At first it was, look, this is going to sound terrible. Oh, I'm sure it is, Natalie says. Go on. My friends bet me $1 million that I couldn't make you fall in love with me in 3 months, Zach admits, expecting her to slap him or storm off. Instead, Natalie bursts out laughing. Like genuinely laughing so hard she has to sit down on a bench. You're serious? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. She wipes tears from her eyes. Let me guess. They pick me because I'm not some supermodel trophy girlfriend? Yeah, Zach says, quietly ashamed. Wow, your friends suck. And honestly, so do you for accepting that bet. Natalie stands up. But you know what the funny part is? I actually started to think you might be a decent person underneath all that designer cologne and manufactured charm. Guess I was wrong. She starts to walk away, and Zach feels something crack inside his chest. Natalie, wait. You're right, I was a complete jerk. But somewhere along the way, this stopped being about a bet. I actually like you. Like, really like you. You're smart, funny, you call me out on my nonsense, and you don't care about my money. You're the first real person I've met in years. Natalie turns around. That's a great speech, Zach. But here's the thing. I don't date projects. I don't date guys who need to learn a lesson about being a decent human being. I date grown men who already know how to treat people with respect. She leaves, and this time Zach doesn't follow her. So you're probably thinking this story ends with Zach losing the bet and learning a valuable lesson, right? Wrong. Because 2 weeks later, something happens that forces both of them to face the truth about what they really mean to each other. And trust me, it involves Natalie's sister, a canceled wedding, and Zach making the most expensive and most meaningful gesture of his entire life. Stay with me. 2 weeks of radio silence? Zach didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up at the shelter. He actually respected her boundaries for once. But he also did something else. He called Preston and Derek and told them the bet was off. He lost. He'd pay each of them $1 million. You're giving up? Preston asked, shocked. You still have 6 weeks left. It's not about the bet anymore, Zach said. It was never about winning. I was just too stupid to realize it. He paid them. $2 million gone. Just like that. Meanwhile, Natalie was dealing with a crisis. Her younger sister Emma's wedding was in 3 days, and the venue had just flooded. Emma was devastated. They'd saved for 2 years for this wedding, and now they'd lost their deposit and had nowhere to host 50 guests. Natalie was frantically calling every venue in the city when her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Hi, is this Natalie Rodriguez? A professional voice asked. Yes. This is Caroline from the Plaza Hotel. We have an opening this Saturday for a full wedding package. Ceremony, reception, catering, everything. It's been prepaid by an anonymous donor who specifically requested your sister Emma's name. Would you be interested? Natalie's heart stopped. The Plaza. That's like... I can't afford the Plaza. As I mentioned, it's been completely prepaid. We just need confirmation that you'd like to accept. Natalie knew immediately who did this. She hung up and called Zach. You booked my sister's wedding at the Plaza? She said when he answered. I heard through... Okay, I still have a PI who updates me on things. I'm working on that boundary issue, Zach admitted. But when I heard what happened, I wanted to help. No strings attached. You don't even have to see me there. Natalie was quiet for a long moment. Zach, this is too much. It's not about the money, Nat. It's about doing something good for someone who actually deserves it. Your sister. You. You've taught me more in 2 months than I learned in my entire life. This isn't about winning you back. It's about saying thank you for making me realize I was living like a complete tool. Another long pause, then, you're still a work in progress, you know that? I know. But maybe I judged you too harshly. Maybe people can actually change. Does this mean I can come to the wedding? Zach asked hopefully. Absolutely not, Natalie said, but he could hear her smiling. But you can take me to dinner next week. Somewhere normal, like Applebee's. Applebee's? Zach sounded horrified. See? Still a work in progress? Natalie laughed. If you can't handle Applebee's, you definitely can't handle me. Challenge accepted. They started dating. Real dating. Not as a bet, not as a conquest, just two people who challenged each other to be better. 6 months later, Zach proposed, not at some fancy restaurant or exotic location. At the animal shelter, while they were both covered in dog hair, surrounded by barking puppies. This is the least romantic place you could have chosen, Natalie said, crying and laughing at the same time. Are you kidding? This is where you taught me what actually matters, Zach replied. Plus, biscuits helped me pick out the ring. The golden retriever barked in agreement. She said yes. Here's the lesson, folks. Love isn't about winning. It's not about strategy or conquest or proving something to your friends. Real love happens when you stop trying to impress someone and start trying to understand them. When you realize that the person who challenges you, who calls you out on your nonsense, who makes you want to be better, that's the person worth fighting for. Zach lost a $2 million bet, but gained something priceless. And Natalie? She got a guy who finally understood that her value had nothing to do with his wallet, and everything to do with who she was as a person. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is losing exactly what you thought you wanted. Because that's when you discover what you actually need. If this story hit you right in the feels, like and subscribe for daily curious stories. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever completely misjudged someone and they ended up changing your life? I want to hear your stories. See you in the next one.